Hey guys, welcome back to another classic movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the 1987 movie No Man's Land, written by Dick Wolf and starring Charlie Sheen and Randy Quaid. This is a crime drama that I was not aware of at all. Up until a few days ago, I was just looking through Wikipedia, just going through some filmographies, stumbled upon this, and not only Charlie Sheen, Randy Quaid, but many other actors involved in the production I was familiar with. Read the synopsis and I thought, okay, yeah, I need to check this out right away. So in terms of the story, we have this San Diego police officer called Benji Taylor, being played by the actor D.B. Sweeney. The young cop gets tasked to infiltrate a Porsche garage in Los Angeles that's suspected of being connected to this recent Grand Theft Auto scam. So Benji goes undercover as a mechanic in this garage, trying to obtain as much information as possible and then relaying that to his lieutenant, played by Randy Quaid. Charlie Sheen's character Ted owns the garage and becomes friends with Benji over time. As Benji gets more and more involved with Ted and his illegal activities, he also becomes romantically involved with Ted's sister, Anne. Of course, things escalate naturally. The character of Benji, he does struggle at times as he gets more and more involved with Charlie Sheen's character and the lifestyle in which Ted leads. Later on in the movie, we meet this rogue detective called Curtis Lewis. He's this corrupt cop, basically on the take. He is feeding information to Ted for money, and information being about police activities and stuff like that. It's never established how long exactly the relationship between Curtis Lewis and Ted has been going on for, but it's likely it's been going on for some time, and there's been numerous payments being made to Lewis, with Ted benefiting from the information, always one step ahead of the cops. This corrupt cop, Curtis Lewis, finds out about the undercover operation involving Benji and tells Ted that he's basically being played this whole time. So things get crazier, some people get killed, and Ted then prepares to leave the country. Before he leaves, Benji gives him a call and convinces him to meet him at the mall, where they can basically steal some more Porsches. They meet up, Benji tries to apprehend and arrest Ted, and in the process, Ted gets killed. So that's the overall arching story of No Man's Land. I will say this movie has a very similar style to the Miami Vice TV show, in terms of the cars, the fashion, the music, the locations that were used. It all falls in line with the Miami Vice style that we see going on in that show. But then hey, should we really be that surprised? Because this movie, as I mentioned, was written by Dick Wolf. Dick Wolf, during the time of this movie being made, was currently the Miami Vice executive producer. So clearly there was a lot of crossover in terms of style between both projects. So as I mentioned, I'd never actually heard of this film before up until a few days ago. And just thinking about it, when it comes to the marketing of this film, going into it, all I saw was Charlie Sheen on the poster, on the DVD cover. He's there front and center. So naturally I assumed he was the lead character. But in actuality, Charlie Sheen is just a supporting actor in this movie. The lead is D.B. Sweeney as Benji, but you wouldn't know that from any of the marketing going into this movie. Even the trailer is pretty Charlie Sheen-centric, and I think a lot of that might have been to do with the fact that Charlie Sheen was coming off the back of, I believe, Wall Street at the time, or around that time, so he was an up-and-coming star, and D.B. Sweeney was not an established actor, so I guess that was the reasoning. I just thought that was interesting. As I said, I assumed to see a lot more Charlie Sheen in this movie. Ted, the character, he's in it a fair bit, but he's not even introduced up until like, I think at least 20 minutes into the movie. So yeah, just kind of surprising. I will say I'm not really into cars that much personally, but I will say that anyone who is would, I think, thoroughly enjoy this movie. This movie is very car centric. The plot involves cars. We have a lot of car chases, just a lot of scenes involving cars. So yeah, if you're into cars at all, especially Porsches, this is a movie for you. And actually just thinking about it, Miami Vice, I told you kind of the similar themes and connections there. Miami Vice, had frequent car chases in throughout the various episodes of that show. So yeah, another thing that kind of transcends between the two projects. I've got to say, Charlie Sheen is great in this role. It's one of my favourite Charlie Sheen performances he's ever given, and he just suits this role to a T. Thinking about Charlie Sheen, he obviously comes from a very successful, wealthy family in real life. So him portraying a kind of successful, kind of arrogant, rich type wasn't necessarily a stretch. And he's wonderful in this movie, and he really steals the show. No offense to DB Sweeney, but he just doesn't have the charisma. But when Charlie Sheen appears as Ted, immediately you just notice that screen presence. I'm not too familiar with DB Sweeney's filmography. He obviously never went on to be a huge actor. He's solid in this. Doesn't give a bad performance. It's just kind of very, okay, good, serviceable, nothing too out the ordinary. There's no real kind of standout scenes for that character, really. Got to give a shout out to Randy Quaid, who plays the lieutenant in this movie. Very convincing, very great, authentic performance as the lieutenant wanting to nail Ted and bring an end to this car scam that's been going on. In terms of the soundtrack, I did enjoy it. It definitely has at times there's some very nice slow themes that are used, especially towards the end of the movie when Ted is killed. It's got this kind of electronic kind of sound with heavy use of synthesizers, and has a very kind of dark vibe. And yeah, I really enjoyed the soundtrack actually. The more I think about it, it raised the film up a little bit, having this kind of serious kind of tones and serious vibe used throughout the movie. So in terms of the dislikes, I will have to say the whole love affair between Benji and Anne, I didn't think that was really necessary. It felt pretty flat, and the two actors didn't really have that much chemistry on screen, and you could kind of see that, and yeah, it just didn't work for me. A lot of the time in crime films, you get this kind of romantic subplot taking place, and a lot of the time it doesn't really need to be there. They could have had this subplot with the whole Benji, falling in love with Anne, Ted's sister. They could have had that, but you needed a more dynamic actress in the role of Anne to pull that off effectively, because it just fell flat. As I said, there was no real interest, and at the times when they were on screen, it was just kind of like, okay, can we get to the next car chase? Can we move the story along? Because the actual main plot is interesting. This subplot just slowed things down, and yeah. And that really brings me on to my next dislike, and it is the casting of Laura Harris as Anne. I'm not really familiar with her other work, but I have to just say she is pretty wooden in this movie. And she kind of brought the film down a little bit. She wasn't necessarily a bad actress, but she just gave nothing really. She was just reading the lines. I will say she's very beautiful. I can see definitely in terms of the visual, she's a stunning woman, and on screen, she looks beautiful, as I said. But in terms of the character, the character is required to emote and to be sad, and there are just times when clearly the actress Laura Harris can't do that. She just can't, and it just comes off very unnatural, and she's very kind of deadpan almost. She's very kind of, When she's supposed to be mad or be angry, she's just kind of. It's hard to explain. There's no oomph there. There's no fight. There's no life there. She's just very wooden, and maybe she's great in other things, but in this, I thought she was pretty bad. The only other dislike I'd have to say would be at the very end, the decision making from the character of Ted. As I mentioned earlier, Ted sorts out a plane ticket. He's packing in his apartment. He's about to leave and gets a call from Benji. Benji persuades him to meet him at the mall and they can go steal Porsches. Benji's trying to act like everything is fine. And all the while Ted's just like, I want out of this situation. Stupidly, Ted decides to go meet Benji. I guess he thought maybe he was going to kill Benji as well. I don't really understand the thought process, because ultimately Ted gets killed. Ted knew by that point Benji was a cop, so why risk it? He already had sorted out a plane ticket. He was going to pay at the front desk when he got to the terminal. You had a perfect getaway and you had an exit route and you didn't take it. It's fine for the characters to end up at the mall. I just wish there was other reasoning behind it rather than Benji just hey man, let's go steal some Porsches. Okay. What about your plane ticket? What about, or even if Ted agreed and okay, I'll meet you in 10-20 minutes, and then just go straight to the airport. And then Benji chases him at the airport and they have the showdown there. That would have worked out better than this whole thing of, we'll meet at the mall and we'll go steal Porsches, which obviously just escalates into them having a gunfight in the parking lot. So, I don't know. They didn't have to mention the plane ticket, Anyways, that was a dislike for me. That was a little bit silly in terms of the filmmaking. But overall, in terms of the ranking of this movie, I am going to rank this a 7 out of 10. Charlie Sheen is the best part of this movie. If you're a fan of Charlie Sheen, if you're a fan of Wall Street, for example, and kind of that early, young Charlie Sheen, he's great in this, and it's definitely worth watching if you're also a fan of Miami Vice or 80s crime drama in general. The movie has some decent acting in it. It's an interesting story, and the whole stealing a Porsche and then stripping it for parts, stuff like that, selling it on, stripping the numbers, I found that aspect of the movie very interesting, and actually I wish we'd seen more of that. There was, as I said, a lot of time spent on the romantic relationship between Anne and Benji, and that didn't really need to be there. But still, some great acting from Charlie Sheen, one of his best performances that I've ever seen him in. Was not aware of this movie. I think more people should go out and check this out if you've not already seen it. If you have seen it, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Charlie Sheen in this movie, the best part of it, and I don't know, if he wasn't in this movie and we had an actor in the role of Ted who was kind of less dynamic, less cocky, less arrogant, I think actually if we didn't have Charlie Sheen in this movie would be a lot worse, and I'd have to rank it a lot lower. So Charlie Sheen really is the best part of this, and credit to him. Top performance.